I'll be honest, I made a huge mistake. I'm Mallory, a 33-year-old woman. And I believed I could manage myself better, to be honest, though. I've never been very good at making responsible decisions. You might say that I've always been more of a go-with-the-flow type of lady, or perhaps the word impulsive would be more accurate. In any case, I wouldn't say that what transpired on New Year's Eve was my best moment. But I also don't think it's fair to hold me solely responsible. Here is the situation, Greg. My boss and everyone else at the tiny marketing agency where I work know each other's business. Greg is one of those gregarious party animal types who manages to maintain his professionalism so that no one can criticize him. He doesn't act like he's in his mid-40s, married and has children. He consistently plans happy hours, tells jokes that are almost too offensive, and stays out later than the interns. Since he's my employer, I've learned to laugh with him. Even though I've always felt he was a bit too much. It was the same on New Year's Eve. Greg invited everyone in the office to a party he planned at a hip downtown pub. He made it apparent that this was an opportunity to celebrate and have fun with those who work beside us every day, regardless of what that entails. Initially, I had no intention of attending, but Greg has the ability to persuade. Besides, I didn't really have a better strategy. My 35-year-old husband had previously stated that he had no desire to travel. He stayed at home because he dislikes noisy pubs and isn't a party animal. I reasoned that it wouldn't hurt to stop in for a drink or two, make an appearance, and go before midnight. Well, it didn't work out that way. Greg was already on his second or possibly third round of tequila shots when I arrived at the crowded pub. Mallory, you're too sober for New Year's Eve. Fix that, he remarked, waving me over as if I were the honored guest and passing me a glass of champagne. I laughed it off, but before I knew it, I was being served another drink and then another. Although I didn't intend to get wasted, I also didn't want to be the buzzkill who refused. In addition, it's New Year's, shouldn't you do that? After a few hours, Greg began to do what he always does, which is to dance, tell outrageous stories, and behave like the best friend to everyone. One of my coworkers and I found ourselves in a dance-off somehow. For once, I wasn't feeling like Mallory, the cautious wife, and I was enjoying myself. In retrospect, I probably should have kept an eye on the time and the number of drinks I was having, but it felt nice to let loose. By midnight, I was hammered in an embarrassing way. Greg continued to make jokes about my being the life of the party because he found it humorous. It was far after 1 a.m. when I finally left. I hadn't even noticed my phone vibrating, but Colin had contacted me many times to inquire when I'd be home. Actually, when I checked, all I saw was "Are you serious right now?" followed by "Don't bother waking me up." I should have called an Uber and left right away. But I stayed for one more drink because I believed it was too late to make any changes. I might as well have some fun. Colin was sitting on the couch, wide awake, arms crossed, and sporting that expression one that combines annoyance and disappointment. When I eventually staggered through the door, he said, "You smell like a distillery. Do you even know what time it is?" Before I could even say, "Hey," I attempted to shrug it off. But he wouldn't have it. "Oh, come on, it's New Year's." I collapsed into the couch after kicking off my heels. It's not like I do this all the time. I rolled my eyes because, to be honest, I thought he was exaggerating when he said, "You're drunk, Mallory, and you stayed out half the night without even texting me back." "I can take care of myself. I'm an adult," I yelled. "It was a party. What do you want me to do? Sit in a corner sipping water?" "I wanted you to respect me enough to come home when you said you would," I shot back, louder than I meant to. "Respect you, Colin. It's not like I was out cheating on you. I was with my coworkers." "Stop being so insecure." I immediately regretted using the word insecure, not because I felt it was improper, but because I knew it would irritate him. Regarding that, Colin has always been a bit sensitive, even though I believe he is overly sensitive for his own good. He detests it when I confront him about it. He got up and paced the room, asking, "You think this is about me being insecure? This isn't about me. It's about you acting like you're single when you're married." That struck a chord. With a slight wobble due to the tequila, I leaped from the couch. I laughed and said, "Acting single just because I had a few drinks and stayed out late. Grow up, Colin." From then on, things rapidly got out of hand. He said I was impolite and self-centered. I said he was boring and domineering. Although it wasn't our first disagreement, it was undoubtedly one of the worst. I believe he even remarked, "You care more about what Greg thinks than what I think," at one point. Which was absurd, to be honest. It's not like I was out flirting with Greg, who is my boss. Half of our arguments stem from Colin's paranoia, and I'm sick of it. After a while, I simply left and locked myself in the bathroom, where I remained until I heard him go to bed. A part of me felt that he was exaggerating everything, but another part of me understood that I had gone too far. I don't do this every weekend, really. All I wanted was to enjoy myself. Is that a crime, really? The following morning was difficult. My mouth was dry, my head was throbbing, and I felt as though a truck had struck me, to be honest. Though, it wasn't even the worst. Knowing that Colin was most likely still insane was the worst thing. I would eventually have to deal with it. I looked at the clock as I turned over in bed, 10:30 a.m. I could tell he was awake because of the coffee scent coming from the hallway. Fantastic. I wasn't prepared for a conversation just yet. I spent as much time as possible in bed, browsing through my phone and acting as though I had no worries. Eventually, though, my stomach began to growl and I was forced to confront the truth. Colin was reading the news on his tablet at the table. As he normally does. When I entered the kitchen, he didn't speak, he didn't look up. As if I wasn't even there, he simply sat there drinking his coffee. I said, "Morning," attempting to sound informal. He didn't answer, leaning against the counter. I picked up a glass of water. That caught his attention. "Okay. So you're just going to ignore me now?" Real mature, with no expression on his face. He set down the tablet and turned to face me. I sipped my water and shrugged, asking, "Do you even remember what you said last night?" "Not really. But I'm guessing you're about to remind me." I stopped off, unsure of what to do with that. "You called me insecure, like I'm some kind of jealous teenager." I had mentioned that. So it wasn't like he was mistaken. However, it's not as if anything happened suddenly. I mean, you were acting a little insecure. I knew I had just added gasoline to the flames as his jaw tightened. "Wow, Mallory, you really don't get it, do you?" "What?" I retorted. "That you're mad because I stayed out late. That's what this is about, right?" "No," he firmly said. "This is about respect. About the fact that you don't even think about how your actions affect me or us." I rolled my eyes until they ached. Here we go again with the guilt trip. Colin, I went to a party. I had a few drinks and I came home. End of story. Why do you have to make everything so dramatic? Because it's not just this one time, Mallory. It's all the time. You don't think ahead. You don't care about the consequences. You just do whatever you feel like in the moment and expect me to deal with the fallout. That hurt. Mostly because I knew in my heart that he was right, but I wasn't going to acknowledge it. At any rate, not then. I deflected instead. "Oh please, don't act like you're some saint. You're not exactly perfect," he retorted. "Colin, I never said I was. But at least I'm not out getting drunk with my boss at 1 a.m. while my spouse is sitting at home wondering where I am." I lost it at that point. With an elevated voice, I asked, "You know what your problem is? You don't trust me. You never have, and I'm sick of it." His chair scuffed the tile floor as he got to his feet. "Maybe I don't trust you because you keep giving me reasons not to." That momentarily stopped me in my tracks. I was at a loss for words. Then my protective mechanism kicked in, as it always does. "This isn't about trust. This is about you being boring and controlling and trying to make me feel bad for having a life outside of you. Living a life." There was no humor in his laughter. I said, "Mallory, half the time you don't even act like you're married. It's like I'm just some guy you share a house with." He was right. I didn't think so, or at least I didn't want to think so, but even after he slammed the bedroom door and stormed out of the kitchen, I couldn't get rid of the nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't completely wrong. Colin was texting me by then, but it wasn't exactly the type of conversation I wanted to have. So I avoided him for the rest of the day by going for a walk, running a few errands, and even treating myself to lunch at that cute little cafe downtown. "We need to talk," he said. "This isn't sustainable." I didn't respond, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what to say. Talking wouldn't change anything. He'd still be stiff, and I'd still be me. That's just the way we are. However, I couldn't help but wonder if he was right. Was I really that self-centered and that impetuous, or was he just overreacting as usual? It was dark when I arrived home, and Colin was sitting on the couch with his laptop once more. He looked up when I walked in but remained silent. So I sat down across from him and waited for him to start, but he continued typing, so I finally asked, "Are we going to talk, or are you just going to give me the silent treatment all night?" Closing the laptop, he leaned back and stared at me as if he was unsure if I was worth the effort. "Mallory, are you even interested in this marriage?" he continued before I could respond, saying, "Because I don't know how much more of this I can take." That hit me like a ton of bricks. Of course I cared, didn't I? You give me the impression that I'm not even important to you and that you don't give a damn about how your behavior affects me. I blurted out, "That's not true," but he stopped me with a hand gesture. "Then prove it," he said. Because I'm done being the only one trying to make this work. I was at a loss for words. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely immobile. Perhaps that was the issue. Perhaps I had been so preoccupied with defending myself and defending my decisions that I hadn't taken the time to consider how they affected him or us. I couldn't really bring myself to apologize, though, even as I sat there looking at him, because I still felt like I wasn't totally to blame, that he was asking too much, and that he was expecting me to be someone I'm not. And then it dawned on me that perhaps he was right, that perhaps we weren't compatible anymore. But what do you do when you realize that? How do you mend something that's already so broken? "Do you even care about this marriage?" Colin asked. The silence between us was suffocating. I sat there trying to muster up some kind of response, but the words just wouldn't come. What was I supposed to say? Of course I cared, but it wasn't like I could snap my fingers and make everything perfect. He didn't seem to understand that I wasn't some Stepford wife who could cater to his every need and still stay true to myself. Eventually, Colin just shook his head like he'd already decided I wasn't worth waiting for. "You know what he said, standing up, forget it, you're not going to answer, so what's the point?" "Colin, wait," I said, but he was already walking away again. He spent the rest of the evening holed up in the bedroom while I sat on the couch staring at the TV without actually watching it. My mind was racing. Part of me wanted to go in there and talk things out, but another part of me was too proud or maybe too scared. What if he really was done with me? What if this was the beginning of the end? The thought made my chest tighten. But instead of confronting it, I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through Instagram, looking for anything to distract me. That's when I saw the photos Greg had posted. A whole slideshow from the New Year's Eve party. There I was, front and center in at least 3 of them, laughing, dancing, and looking way too comfortable with a glass in my hand. One picture in particular made my stomach drop. It was me and Greg, arms around each other like we were best friends. His caption didn't help. "Work hard, play harder. Cheers to the best team in the biz." I could practically hear Colin's voice in my head tearing me apart for how inappropriate it all looked, and honestly, for once, I couldn't entirely blame him. The photos weren't bad exactly, but they definitely weren't good either. Especially not with the way things were between us right now. Without thinking, I clicked on the comment section. Most of them were harmless co-workers tagging each other, people making jokes about how wild the night had been, but then I saw one that made my blood run cold. It was from Greg's wife, Jessica. "Looks like everyone had a little too much fun," she'd written, followed by a string of passive-aggressive emojis. My stomach churned. Jessica and I had only met a handful of times, but I could tell she wasn't a fan of mine. She had that polished soccer mom vibe that made me feel sloppy by comparison. I could imagine her scrolling through those photos, her mind spinning with all the worst-case scenarios. And now here she was calling me out in front of everyone. I put my phone down and stared at the wall, my mind racing. Should I delete the comment? Text Greg and ask him to take the photos down? Apologize to Jessica even though I hadn't actually done anything wrong? Every option felt like a losing battle. I didn't have to wonder long, though, because a few minutes later, Colin walked into the room holding his phone like it was Exhibit A in a trial. His face was calm to command that terrified me more than if he'd been yelling. "Did you see these?" he asked, holding up his screen. It was Greg's post, of course. I could see the slideshow flipping through the photos automatically, each one worse than the last. "Yeah," I said cautiously, "I just saw them. Do you not see how bad this looks, Mallory?" "It's not bad," I said defensively. "It's just a work thing. Everyone was there. Everyone wasn't draped all over their boss," he shot back, his voice rising slightly. "Do you have any idea how this makes me feel? How does it make me look?" "Oh please," I said. rolling my eyes. You're overreacting. Nobody's looking at these and thinking anything about you. This isn't about them, he snapped. It's about me. It's about us. And it's about the fact that you don't even care how your actions affect me. There it was again. That same accusation. The same guilt trip. I stood up, suddenly feeling like I couldn't sit still any longer. You know what your problem is, Colin, I said, pointing a finger at him. You're so focused on how everything affects you that you don't even bother to ask. Why, I might need a night out to let loose, because you're selfish, he said bluntly. That's why you don't think about anyone but yourself. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I opened my mouth to argue, but he cut me off before I could even start. You want to know the truth, Mallory? I'm tired. I'm tired of being the bad guy every time I ask for a little respect. I'm tired of being the only one who cares about this marriage. And I'm tired of pretending that this is normal? I laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. You were such an expert on what's normal. Maybe if you didn't act like such a stick in the mud all the time, we wouldn't be having this conversation. His face turned red, and for a moment I thought he was going to lose it completely. But instead he just shook his head and walked away again. This time, though, he didn't slam the door, he didn't yell, he just left the house, grabbing his coat and keys on the way out. I stood there frozen, listening to the sound of his car starting up and driving off into the night. For a split second, I thought about running after him, but I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my phone and texted Greg, "Hey, can you take down those photos? They're causing problems at home." It was a stupid move, one I regretted almost immediately. But I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. A few minutes later, Greg replied with a thumbs up emoji and the post disappeared, but the damage was already done. I sat on the couch, staring at my empty glass from the night before, and felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Fear, not anger, not frustration. Just pure gut-wrenching fear that maybe this time I'd gone too far. Maybe Colin wasn't coming back, and maybe deep down I deserved it. I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, my mind spinning in circles. The silence of the house was deafening. I kept glancing at the clock, waiting for the sound of Colin's car in the driveway, but it didn't come. Part of me wanted to text him to tell him I was sorry, or at least something close enough to an apology to bring him back. But another part of me, the stubborn part, told me to wait. Let him cool off, let him come to me. That's how we usually worked, but this time felt different. When the door finally opened, it was almost midnight. Colin walked in quietly, his shoulders slumped, his face unreadable. He didn't say anything, just set his keys on the counter and went straight to the bedroom. I followed him, my heart pounding in my chest. "Colin," I whispered as I stood in the doorway, "may we speak?" His head was in his hands as he sat on the edge of the bed, and when he looked up at me, his eyes were no longer angry but rather weary and defeated. "Mallory, what's there to discuss?" "You don't listen," he remarked. "You're indifferent. I'm supposed to be cool with you doing whatever you want." How many times had I dismissed his worries? And how many times had I told myself he was exaggerating, keep from acknowledging that perhaps I was mistaken? "That's not true," I murmured. But even as I said it, it felt hollow. I sat down across from him, my hands gripped in my lap, and he shook his head, saying, "I don't think you even comprehend how much you hurt me." "Colin, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't intend to." "Don't say you're sorry if you don't mean it," he interrupted. "Don't say it just to shut me up." His comments hurt, but I couldn't help but see the truth in them. How many times had I apologized to settle a dispute or made a commitment to improve just to revert to my old habits? For the first time, I was unable to shift the blame or come up with an excuse. All I could do was sit there and stare at the floor, feeling the consequences of everything I had done. "Are you even in love with me?" I was taken aback by his abrupt inquiry, which was hardly audible above a whisper. "Of course I do," I blurted out. "You're my husband, Colin. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't have married you. Do you respect me, though? Are you even considering me when you make these choices? Or am I just a piece of furniture that you don't notice until it gets in the way?" he pressed. Before I could stop the tears, they started. "That's not fair," I cried, my voice breaking. "I'm trying, Colin. Indeed, I am. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you're trying to keep everyone else happy, your boss, your coworkers, whoever, but not me." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but I couldn't because I knew deep down that he was right. I'd spent so much time defending my actions, telling myself that I had a right to a little freedom and fun, that I hadn't stopped to think about how it made him feel, how it gradually eroded the foundation of our marriage until hardly anything remained. I finally murmured, hardly raising my voice above a whisper, "I don't know how to fix this." Colin groaned and fell back against the headboard, adding, "I don't either, but I know I can't keep living like this. I want to fix it. I don't know how, but I want to try." He didn't immediately respond. For a brief moment, I thought he was going to tell me it was too late, that he was done. But then he nodded once. "I can't keep feeling like I'm the only one fighting for us," I said, wiping my eyes and giving him a serious look for what felt like the first time in months. He gave off the impression of being worn out, not just from tonight, but from everything. "Okay," he said, "but Mallory, it can't be me alone this time. You must begin accepting responsibility for your decisions, since it must be both of us. No more making excuses or holding me responsible for everything." The words were weighty, but I nodded. I wasn't exactly good at responsibility, but I had to try if it meant keeping my marriage intact. I said, "Okay," and he smiled at me warily. "I'll try." It wasn't a perfect ending, it wasn't even close, but it was a beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we had a chance. That's all I'm asking. We sat there in silence for a bit, the tension between us finally lessening a little.